The click of your boots echoed in the hallway while you exited the laboratories. You were never one to be interested in scientific endeavors, but ever since absorbing the research from the previous Yakuza leader, you helped head on progress that would benefit not only the new order of the Yakuza, but also friends of such to the new boss. A smirk crept on your face. You couldn't help thinking about it, remembering how everything transpired to this present day. You were thankful for information about this place thanks to Kirishima, and luckily kept its activities under wraps, figuratively speaking. You walked past an old cracked mirror, fixing up the eye makeup on your face, having smudged some of its color and shape thanks to a certain runaway. How many times has it been that you've been asked to follow up on someone else's hindsight? You began to despise that particular job, questioning why someone would continue to resist when there were rewards. Sighing at the thought, you exited the once infamous headquarters of the Shiei Haisaikai, an old faction of yore, to meet up with a few members of the Yakuza along with the new boss, his grin widening at the sight of you. Beijinho. He cooed with arms wide open. You trotted towards him, opening into his embrace and allowing his large arms to hold you. "Missed you too, Hanta," you greeted, looking up into his eyes. "Had a good night's sleep?"
Not without you,"
he admitted, rubbing his thumb gently across some smudged makeup on your face.
"You didn't need to stay overnight on production."
"Someone has to keep an eye on it all," you replied with a yawn. "And you need your beauty sleep." A chuckle erupted from Sero's throat before he led you to the modest limousine by the road. The other members of his clan followed suit, making their way to the convoy that followed after. With a click of the door, Sero stepped aside to allow you in first, taking his hand and proceeding to make yourself comfortable before he sat beside you. As a convoy of cars made their way out into the street, you watched the buildings rush by you, the sunlight piercing into your eyes. Aside from an hour power nap, you had stayed up the night to keep a close watch on the stock of quirk suppressant formula. After all, Sero's best business was with friends. You wanted nothing more than to provide the best product, but you still wondered how Sero was able to still supply the formula for reproduction. It was the one thing he kept close to him. Though you felt the sleep in your eyes, you felt a hand on your knee, its fingers caressing it gently. No words needed to be exchanged during these kinds of days. At the very least, Sero respected that. Ground rules were already laid. Sero's phone pulled you from your dozing and from the comfort of his touch while he answered it, immediately putting it onto the speaker for you to listen. Another ground rule. Everything was discussed between the both of you.
"Fancy hearing from you,"
chirped Sero with his wide grin.
"I'd expect your call later this afternoon."
"'Twould be the case, but I'm on a time crunch,"
spoke a familiar deep voice on the other line.
"My treasure is chasing after your accounts and I've lost communication with them. You wouldn't happen to have heard anything, have you?"
A moment of silence passed. You recalled having to brief the debt collector on a few missed payments owed to Sero, but even then you haven't heard a word from them since the night before. You turned to the phone in Sero's hand, watching his grin disappearing briefly before it returned again.
"No, I can't say I have,"
replied Sero, his eyes on you.
"No, sorry, Ida.
I know that their first stop was the highest debtor, though.
I've told them many times to ascend in accounts,
stated Ida with a heavy sigh.
Sounds like you've lost a little control,
poked Sero playfully.
Not in the least. In fact, I may have to enlist more help than I bargained for.
Good luck with that, but make sure my assets are secure,
warned Sero before a scoff was heard over the speaker.
No need for insults. It'll be done in due time.
The tone repeated incessantly before Sero hung up on his end, slipping the phone into his pocket. Your brow quirked at the abrupt end of the phone call, only to notice that Sero had his eyes on you, smiling at your reaction.
Don't be offended,
he reassured.
He's still as stuck up as usual,
you muttered, earning a chuckle from Sero.
But he's good on his word. I feel for the guy. I mean, I'd feel the same way if I didn't know where you were.
You turned to Sero with a wry smile, cheeky in nature before you playfully slapped his knee. He chuckled at your playfulness. Even during times of stress and very little sleep, he recognized your way of showing love and affection in the best way possible. After meeting you during his last year of UA, he had seen a different light, and not because of your quirk. A few races around the city had him learning more about your occupation, and though he disagreed at first about your vigilante ways, something changed inside of him that made him wonder about what other ways could better society. Hanta Sero was never one to think of politics, but after seeing a few things from your point of view, he began to see how there were quicker means to achieve the same, if not better, results. It all started entering the pro-hero scene after graduation, before collecting information on the Yakuza and its almost broken, deteriorated state. Over the years, Sero began to collect broken factions and bring them together under a common cause, until he soon became the head that led the underworld. Up until this day, Sero had attributed all of his success to you, the person who had opened his eyes to different possibilities. The limousine slowed in front of what looked like a warehouse until you realized the location of the stop. Endor Docks. This was a first. Most car rides with Sero were usually between headquarters, business, or the cheeky date he would sneak in, but never somewhere backwater and abandoned. Endor Docks had been infamous since Endeavor's retirement, mostly due to the nature of the retirement rather than the event that took place. Still, your interest was piqued when Sero stepped out of the limousine to then offer his hand to you.
Come along, Beijinho,
he invited.
I think it's about time you meet someone.
Confused, you took his hand as he helped you out of the limousine, taking your hand in his arm and leading you into a burnt, run-down warehouse. It wasn't a luxury stop, like most of his trips. Different, but you weren't perturbed by the appearance of the place. To your recollection, this same warehouse was the reason why Endeavor had called for an early retirement. News reports and the media were fanatic over the entire ordeal. It was a chaotic time, especially for the former #1 hero in the ranks. With the #2 hero gone rogue as well, Hero Society was on the verge of collapse, as the ranking system grew to become wildly out of control. You smirked at the thought. Learning about the mechanisms of hero law and how to bypass it was something you inwardly were proud of, and was happy to share with Sero. Now that the Public Hero Commission had their hands full keeping the peace, it left an opportunity open for friends alike. If it wasn't for Sero's humility, you would have proudly announced that he started it all. While you were in thought and admiring the derelict skeleton left behind, Sero knocked on a set of double doors of what used to be an elevator. A few moments passed while Sero smiled at you, calm before the sound of the doors creaked open, allowing access to a large dumbwaiter attached to a pulley system. It swayed slightly in the space that used to house a lift, while you turned to Sero, skeptical of the contraption in front of you.
I promise it's safe,
reassured Sero.
Uh-huh.
You responded, slightly snarky. Lack of sleep was very unbecoming. A chuckle escaped from Sero's throat while he stepped onto the makeshift lift, even going so far to hop on it while it shook, to dispel your skepticism. He opened a hand to you again, inviting you in. With a sigh, too tired to expend energy for any worry, you took his hand once more, hopping onto the dumbwaiter as it swayed with your weight. The momentum teetered your body into Sero's, feeling his arms wrap around your shoulders and keeping you safe before it started to lower the both of you into the dark, on its own. The creaking of the pulley echoed in the abandoned elevator shaft, watching the light disappear above momentarily from your field of view. Darkness surrounded you briefly, until a shower of artificial light appeared by your feet, revealing an opening that led onto a small entrance hallway, greeted by two young people holding onto a third person, restrained and their head covered by a sack. While Sero and yourself stepped off, these three stepped on, leaving the only exit from wherever Sero led you to unavailable for use. Following Sero, he approached another set of double doors, opening them and peering back onto you with a smile. He entered through the door, leaving it open for you, finally witness to the sounds of young people chattering and walking about in the large space below. For an abandoned warehouse, the basement area was filled with various students going about their day, conversing and socializing. If you didn't know any better, it looked as if it were a
Aizawa!
Called out Sero, approaching an older gentleman and interrupting him with a few students. You noticed the shaggy appearance of the man, his hair tied up haphazardly and his outfit dangling off of his shoulders. It didn't help that he depended on a crutch, specifically tailored to his needs by the look and shape of it. Aizawa waved off the students before he turned to both Sero and yourself, his tired expression ironically mirroring what you're feeling right now. Exhausted.
Nice to see you're doing well,
commented Aizawa, watching the grin widen on Sero's face.
Thanks. Nice to hear from you last night.
He retorted playfully.
I assume I'm taking them off of your hands?
Just for now,
reiterated Aizawa.
I can't have the students here involved with what is happening between here and Todoroki.
No, of course. But, still, I was also hoping that I have a quick chat with the doc here.
You spotted his eyes turn to you briefly, before a hop in his step took you by surprise.
Oh, sorry. This is Aizawa. He was my homeroom teacher back at the academy.
You turned to the older man, his tired eyes peering at you through the long scarf he had wrapped around his shoulders. A smile crept on your face while you held your hand out towards him cordially.
Wow, nice to finally meet the man behind the hero.
You commented, watching Aizawa's eyes peer at your open hand. He reluctantly held his hand out, shaking yours.
Nice to finally meet you in person,
commented Aizawa.
I've heard a few things about you. years ago.
Oh?
Word travels fast through faculty.
Huh?
Anyway, the dock is down that hallway.
Instructed Aizawa, while he hobbled away from the both of you.
Just do whatever, and leave when you can.
As soon as you said your hellos, you watched Aizawa leave immediately, being approached by a few students again on his travels towards wherever this maze of a basement led.
Friendly guy?
You stated, offended yet amused by Aizawa's mannerisms.
Don't worry, he's like that all the time.
Reassured Sero, while he made his way per Aizawa's instructions.
But that's not who I wanted you to meet.
Your attention swung back to Sero, watching his tall frame make his way through the large basement. The more you looked at the scope of the area, the more you realized how architecturally sound it was. There were actual classrooms, lounge areas, training rooms. It was an underground school, filled with young, impressionable people who freely used their quirks wherever they pleased. Sero approached a metal door, knocking on it politely before it opened to what looked like a makeshift clinic, complete with stretcher, metallic desks, and clean closets. But something else caught your eye across the multitude of desks that surrounded the room. The amount of synthesizing equipment, batching a multitude of formulas and liquids. Standing by a lone desk, reading over notes, was a woman in a white coat, her fingers tapping lightly on the metallic surface before she turned to the both of you, a gentle smile crossing her face.
Ah, Sero. It's been a while.
She greeted, standing to her feet and soon noticing you.
And you brought a guest. Doc, this is my Beijinho I've been talking about.
Introduced Sero, opening his arm towards you to come closer.
I see. The one who's been looking after my stock on your end? It's so good to finally meet you.
You turned between Sero and this woman, walking up to her with an open hand.
Nice to meet you too. Did you make all of this?
The woman followed your fingers, pointing towards all of the equipment that continued to synthesize in the clinic. A joyful laugh erupted from her throat, her voice warm and polite.
Yes, it's my life's work,
she responded.
And it's Sero who has been able to get the product out there.
Don't give me all the credit,
replied Sero with a cheeky grin.
I thought it was about time that you knew what's been going on, Beijinho. Besides, with you losing countless hours of sleep, you deserve to know more about what we're dealing with.
Your eyes still held its gaze on the woman, noticing something peeking from underneath the collar of her coat. A patch of white, like gauze.
You okay?
You asked, pointing a finger to your neck to signal your inspection on her person.
Oh, that's nothing,
she replied.
A few students can be rowdy when they need to be treated. I am the medic here after all.
She shuffled her notes on the desk, placing them neatly before she stood to her feet, fixing her coat.
But aside from the introductions, you were wanting something, Sero?
Not particularly, no,
he replied, taking both you and the woman by surprise.
Thought of killing two birds with one stone. I was here to pick up something from Aizawa, but I thought it best for the two of you to meet.
How thoughtful,
responded the woman. You continued to stare at the medic for a while, watching her movements and her speech. She was different, but she felt familiar all the same, like a past memory. You knew well of the others that littered the city, the few that you had to deal with was enough. However, This woman felt like somebody you used to know. Tied to this place,
Beijinho,
called Sero, taking you out of your brief reverie.
we should get you to a bed. You're drifting.
Oh, sorry.
You apologized, exhausted.
You're right, Sero.
Commented the woman.
They can be flighty.
A chuckle was shared between Sero and the medic before a pout pulled on your face, playfully slapping Sero on the shoulder. It only made him laugh harder at your sleep-deprived state. After another trip up the rickety dumbwaiter and a walk back to the limousine, you made yourself comfortable in the car seat before it began to drive away from indoor docks along with its convoy. Sero watched outside the window, as did you, the morning sun now cascading its warmth on your face. A smile crept on your lips while you almost drifted into slumber, until a muffled sound caught your ear. You turned to the middle of the seat, listening in on more shuffling and muffling from the trunk of the car, before turning to face Sero. His eyes glanced at you with a smile, pulling the middle compartment of the seat out for you to look into the dark trunk. There laid a person, that same one with the sack over their head, tied up and gagged. Confused, your expression did not escape Sero's eye.
This was who I was picking up.
Sero reiterated.
We just need to hold on to them for a while, until the heat dies down.
What heat?
You questioned.
Is your old homeroom teacher in trouble?
Not in the slightest. There may be some complications, but we're just babysitting now.
Great. Another handoff. Another oversight. The muffled cries began to grate against your ears before a ball of light appeared in your hands. You eyed the minibar across the way, spotting a can and engulfing it in that same light, transferring the item into the back of the car and knocking the person unconscious. A silence passed between Sero and yourself, while you shrugged your shoulders in response.
I'm not dealing with that sound for the rest of the trip.
You reasoned before you shut the middle compartment of the seat.
I can deal with it once I get some sleep.
All you heard was another laugh. At the very least, you entertained Sero this morning despite the sleep deprivation you began to suffer for it. A shuffle on the leather seats caught your eye, when Sero sat flush next to you, bringing his body next to yours and pulling your head onto his shoulder. Your makeup smudged a little onto his printed dress shirt, but the heat and heartbeat of his body soon lulled you to sleep. Sero gently played with your hair with his arm wrapped around your shoulders. Your breath eased into a slumber while he made himself comfortable, leaning his head atop yours and enjoying the car ride back to headquarters.
Bons sueños, Beijinho.